tell them thank you very much for making that happen, but most important is talk salsa. I'm going to sit down and watch. Thanks.
Thank you, Mario. All right, so we're going to, as Mario mentioned, we're going to talk about Magic Wheelchair today. I found the Magic Wheelchair shirt, so I'm ready to go. Who here has heard of Magic Wheelchair that wasn't on the build team? Awesome. Okay. So let's talk first about, let's just give a little context, right? So my name is Ian. I am part of the Maker Effect Foundation, which is a nonprofit foundation in Orlando, Florida. We do a few things. We've been producing Maker Faire Orlando since 2012. As Mario's probably learned, it's way more work than you realize at the beginning. But you get into it and you kind of get a sickness where you just keep going and it keeps getting bigger and crazier and more fun. We also produce Maker Effects Makerspace in South Orlando, so we are very lucky to have a number of community makerspaces in Orlando. Ours happens to be the closest to Miami, just saying. And so we like to work together, we like to build together, and in the process of that, we do things like power racing as well, and that's part of what we're here doing this week. We brought, how many cars did we bring? We brought 5. We brought 5 cars from our makerspace. We got to play a little Tetris, double layer in the trailer. That was fun. But I actually want to talk today about the Magic Wheelchair program and the Magic Wheelchair organization. We learned about Magic Wheelchair, I want to say about a year ago was when I really learned about it, and it was one of those experiences where you hear about something and you immediately say, I'm going to do that. Like, that's so awesome. And I know so many talented people. We are going to get together and we're going to do that. So let's learn about what it is. As he mentioned, they've done just a number of these different costumes, and the more you look, the more you find these just amazing costumes. Like this one, the boy, he actually didn't want to be the center of attention, so he gets inside the costume and it completely closes, and so all you see is the 3-headed dog going through, the convention center or whatnot. So, and then on the right, that is just a preview. That is Bumblebee. So that is the Magic Wheelchair that myself, a number of folks in the room from our makerspace and other makerspaces work together to build. And what I'd like to do this afternoon is just tell you about the process, because I think once you see it, you'll say, we can do that, right? And it would be a great project for a FIRST Robotics team. It's a great project for a makerspace. It's a great project for any group that wants to get together and make a difference. And Anouk talked about it earlier. When we show what we do, when we talk about it, it makes it very easy for other people to get involved. So we met the Magic Wheelchair team. I got to see that amazing, is that a dinosaur? Whatever it is. Up close and personal at the Nation of Makers conference last year in Santa Fe. My wife was there as well. She sat on in a talk with the founder, and she came out of the talk and she said, we're making one of those. I said, when? She says, I don't care, we're making one. Great. And so we immediately talked to the Magic Wheelchair organization. We said, sign us up. They have a process where they match a kiddo in need with a makerspace or another group. They provide a mentor, because there's some things that if you're not used to building around a wheelchair, you just won't know by default. And so that was last July. They asked, and we asked to get paired up. Well, in December, we got a contact from someone else that we met at Nation of Makers, Bill with AT Makers. And one of the things AT Makers does is they help AT Assistive Technology. They help take the things that you and I all use every day and make them usable for people who need assistive technology. And so sort of like Instructables has information how to do things, AT Makers helps you 3D print special switches that can be used when someone can't push a very small button. And they go out and they hack, very common toys or other things to show you how people with disabilities could use those. So Bill is he's in Tarpon Springs. He reached out and he said, hey, do you remember we talked about doing a Magic Wheelchair costume? We said yes. And this is like December 27th at this point. He says, yeah, Magic Wheelchair called. They want to know if we could build one. We work together for the ATIA conference. I said, sure, when is it? February 2nd. Now these usually have a build cycle of 10 to 12 weeks minimum. We've never done one, and by my calendar math, that was sort of less than 4 weeks with some holiday time in there. So we said, sure, let's figure it out. And so meet Alex. So Alex was the young man that was chosen. Alex is 16. Alex has global, I always say it wrong, hyptonia, which basically means he has almost no motor control. So he can stay seated. He can do things like he can play a Casio. He had a Casio keyboard, and so he can play notes, but he has a hard time selecting a specific note, for example. Alex rides in a Conveyed Easy Rider 16-inch wheelchair. That is a push chair. So a lot of the Magic wheelchairs that you saw earlier were motorized wheelchairs. This happens to be a push chair. And when a couple members of our team got together with Alex and his family, and when we talked to the family, we found out they had just seen the new Bumblebee movie. And so we got talking and we said, all right, we're gonna make Bumblebee in 4 weeks or less. So we have a great local prop maker, Stefan, Roundtable Productions, part of Makers Hollow as well. And Stefan, we were freaking out a little bit about the timeline, so we did the only respectable thing. We went and got tacos, and there might have been a beer or two, and this was the napkin sketch that resulted. And so what we talked about was that we were, and this is him talking, I don't have his talent, is when he looked at Bumblebee, he saw a few iconic elements. And one of the main iconic elements was sort of this front grille with the headlights and very much, the new Bumblebee movie, if you haven't seen it, it's a VW Bug again, because it's a retro movie. It's not the 2000s Camaro anymore. As well as Bumblebee's head and then his overall coloring. So we set out to bring that to life. And we got really, really lucky because we immediately hit Amazon and we found that they make a Bumblebee costume helmet designed to fit over your head. It was the perfect scale. You can imagine modeling and printing or designing that would have been very challenging. So we spent, I think, $90 to get the first one here very, very quickly so that we could start taking a look at it. Got super lucky. We were already planning on putting LEDs in for the eyes. Turned out there was already an LED ring in there. We later replaced it with fancier LEDs, but it was already designed to accommodate it. It also had it had a button and it had a bunch of built-in sound effects, which made it very, very easy for us to add sound effects to the project because they were already built in. When we were thinking about how to make all the body panels, and we only had a few weeks, one of the things we were concerned about is how would we have time to design, model, fabricate all of those panels? Well, we had the great idea of why don't we get kids' Power Wheels vehicles, right? Turns out we had a couple of them already in the shop because we do power racing series. So taking these vehicles and cutting them up is a pretty regular thing. So next thing we know, we had a chop shop. And pay attention specifically to the rear bumper on this. You're going to see this later. This came from a motorcycle. So we took a motorcycle and you can see the side of the motorcycle, the side of the engine here. This dashboard ended up figuring in very prominently, as did these doors and this VW Bug. So I think the night after tacos, the day after tacos, we went and purchased that white one for $75 off of Facebook Marketplace. We left, and then the guy called us back because we had told him what we were doing. He says, hey, we have a motorcycle. Could you use that? So we went back and picked up the motorcycle. So this ended up saving a lot of design time, and I think there's a really, really good sort of creative reuse story here. And had we had more time, I think we would have spent too much time designing a whole bunch of custom panels. Instead, we had the benefit of using this. So this all got chopped up. Now, one of the challenges we had is we don't have a Conveyed Easy Rider 16-inch wheelchair sitting around, and Alex needs his chair every day. So what we did, this is the whiteboard at the makerspace, is we diagrammed it, and then we created a set of critical measurements, and we sent a picture of this, we texted this to Alex's mom and said, hey, we need these dimensions. And so for about the entirety of the build, we left this on the whiteboard at the space, and we filled in all the specific dimensions. and I'll preview for you. We didn't actually test fit the chair. It was a Saturday morning reveal. We didn't get a chance to test fit the chair until Thursday night. You can imagine we were a little anxious about this. So after we had the measurements, Harry, wave Harry, hi Harry. Harry made this awesome PVC mock-up chair. This served us very well because it gave us all the critical dimensions to work off. That's a good example of the expertise that the Magic Wheelchair organization shares with you, because that's what they told us to do. They told us first thing you need to do is build a PVC mock-up of the chair so that you know exactly what you're working with. And you can see here, 5 minutes after building that mock-up, we're already taking different pieces and setting them around and sort of creating a visual prototype right from that. I am not getting the button presses. There we go. Okay, so Andrea and Mike in the back, you might recognize them from the BattleBots panel if you were here yesterday. They were gracious. They heard about the project and they were like, how can we help? And we said, well, we're going to be building this weekend. So they drove up from Miami to Orlando. That's Stefan on the right. They went out to his shop. You can see the PVC mock-up there, and they're designing how it's going to go together. And then that weekend, they built. This is the beginnings of the steel frame. Now, a lot of the Magic Wheelchair costumes end up made from PVC. We wanted something a little bit more durable that we could mount a lot on, because it doesn't float. A lot of the costumes that are built on top of motorized chairs, the costume mounts to the chair. Because this chair is a push chair, it doesn't really support that much weight. It's not really designed for that. So what we built is it's a chassis that rides around it and has its own casters underneath it. We wanted something a little bit more rigid. So the team came up, and by the end of the weekend we had that great steel frame. We also needed to design it so that the parents could take it apart and take it home or travel with it or take it to an event. Some of these Magic Wheelchair costumes you see, I don't know how they move it without renting a U-Haul. So there was a lot of guidance from the Magic Wheelchair organization that said, hey, this is great you're doing this. Please think about the family and the transport of this. As it is, we ended up building a lot of costume, but it all breaks down. It's very modular, and it all started around this steel frame. So one of the things that Stefan did is he immediately took a lot of that plastic that he chopped up, and he picked a bunch of it, and he spray painted it, and by the way, he spray paints way better than I ever could. That's like from a spray can. And he painted a bunch of pieces, sort of different variety, kind of gray and a silver and a yellow, which was really good because by the time we got to his shop and started working with it, it was really easy for the rest of us to see how pieces could fit together and contribute. I told you we didn't have time to model and build a lot of it, but one of the things that he did, I remember I said that front fender was really important, the front of the VW Bug. And so what Stefan did was made fiberglass fenders. Andrew, who's in the back, I think spent 6 hours sanding those over 2 nights?
More than 6.
More than 6 hours. And you'll see later, this is a custom headlight assembly that Andrew built using a bright spot LED in the center and then a NeoPixel ring around the outside. And we'll talk more about that. We wanted Bumblebee to not only look good, but to be very interactive. And so there's a lot of LEDs. So here's the fenders coming together after all that sanding work. The bumpers, this is a bicycle fender, so Stefan ran down to the local bike shop and asked them to sell us or give us a fender real cheap.
They were actually on his shelf.
Oh, they were on his shelf. He already had them.
And all of his stuff.
Yeah. So one of the great things about partnering with a prop maker is you can imagine how much random stuff is laying around his shop. So we did a lot of 2 a.m. scavenging during this build. This is rolled copper from Lowe's one night. We had a lot of discussion about that. It was all kind of hand-formed, hand-built. And this process where they went off, banged on it for a bit, came back and tested it, took like probably 4 hours of kind of going back and eyeballing it. And that's a talent I don't have, so I was glad to have some people that really have that design background on the team. I should have mentioned this earlier. At last count, I think it was 27 people contributed to the project in one way or another over a period of roughly 3 weeks by the time we actually met with the family and built. So a lot of people working together. So I mentioned those motorcycle side panels. So those became the side of Bumblebee. They became sort of an amorphous car parts on the side. The side's really not a focus, but we wanted to decorate it. So Harry worked with me, and what we did is we looked at this giant pile of parts, and we started forming things to make it look, well, not like a motorcycle side, mounting things upside down, attaching them together. So you can see here, Stefan's already painted these different bits and cut some apart. This ended up being this is one portion of the motorcycle engine, but what we did is actually mounted it, this picture is, the panel is upside down, so it ends up being mounted the other direction. This is what happens when you accidentally drill the hole in the wrong place. You drill 3 more holes to make it look intentional. You can see all the bits of plastic. See that top piece? That's a bumper off of, I think, a Jeep Power Wheels. Watch for that. That's going to come back later. So this is one of the side panels, almost complete at this point in time. So you can see we've used the Power Wheels plastic in different forms. We've used that engine upside down. We've now got some electrical conduit that we're using and working together. And then later we mount a decorative piece right here that has some LEDs in it as well. Okay, so remember that steel frame I talked about? So one of the benefits of that steel frame is it allowed us to extend out these fender mounts. So custom bent steel rod and custom mounts. I learned a really neat trick watching Stefan do this, because when he put the fender up against it, this plate wasn't in the right place. Now, at my skill level, I would have spent 2 hours cutting and reattaching that plate to get it to fit right. He had this really cool epoxy putty. So we held the fender there, we squished the epoxy putty in place. Once that epoxy putty was dry, on the front of that, now the plate fit perfectly. So that's one of those great things when you work with somebody who's at a completely different skill level than you pick up some fun tricks. This is that VW hood that you saw earlier, but we used a Power Wheels that was a new VW, not an older one. The older ones had that indentation shape on the front. And so that's a piece of Sintra, the expanded PVC Sintra that he cut to place and then attached over the front. And you can see the side panel mounted there. And now you can see the transformer element on the side, and that has NeoPixel LEDs in it. All right, so here's one of the fenders mounted on that fender mount, so you can see it starting to come together. The headlight looks like a glass headlight, doesn't it? But we didn't want a glass headlight there. That seemed like a really, really bad idea. They're big, they're heavy, they're glass, they're hot. So Andrew took a lighting front cover that had that same texture on it and took a plaster cast of it, and then we vacuum formed a piece of that PET G over that to make it. And then this really good looking trim ring around it came from us scavenging Stefan's favorite paint mixing bowl. I still owe him a bowl set. And then we basically cut the top ring of the lip on the top of the bowl. So we cut that off, and then he closed it to size and then made it fit. This is JP. So the neat thing about JP is JP had been to our makerspace, I don't know, a couple times. He's not a member. And again said, what can I do? And we said, well, we're going to be building at Stefan's shop on this night. So he came out, I think I left at 3 a.m. that night, maybe 2:40 a.m., and he was still there. So Stefan said, hey, we've got this bumper. We really hadn't planned on using it, but if you want, kind of do up a steel frame and we'll make it fit in the rest of it. So he worked pretty independently that night, and I would say 3 or 4 nights in a row he was out there. Oh, I don't know about Miami. That happened to be the week it was like 44 degrees at night in Stefan's unconditioned shop. So you can see we're all wearing, multiple layers, and I've got my hands in my pockets in the corner. So this is that frame he's welding up. And then we use Slack to communicate. And so when we knew we were going to have a bumper, I said, hey, we need a tag. So Andrea was like, I got it. And so next thing we knew we had a tag, and somebody else said, hey, we need a tag frame. The next night somebody laser cut a tag frame, and so Bumblebee had a tag. And then we had, if you look, it says Magic Wheelchair on the sticker, which is great. And we presented it to him in February of 19. So sometimes those little details. Okay, so those are those two doors that came off the VW and that helmet. At this point, Stefan has already spent way more time masking and spraying that helmet to match. I learned a lot from watching him mask that helmet too. I've never seen anybody take tape and mask that way. That's pretty amazing. And then the wheels that we used had this big open space in the middle. And so this is a 3D printed dome, another good example where took a picture, sent a measurement, somebody modeled that. Did you model that? Yeah, Andrea modeled it. Somebody else printed it, and so it was great. You know, with 20 plus people working on it, we would post, hey, we need a hubcap, here's what we need, and you know, while we're working, somebody else knocks it out. So Stefan, we were supposed to meet up this night. He was really late, but then he shows up with this. He took that front bumper and this head and used conduit, and in the middle it's kind of hard to see, there's a big gray hose in the center. Turns out it's a shop vac hose. And it just came out amazing. The doors are actually here on hinges, and so they swivel in and out. So if you were going through a tight area, you can fold them in. And that whole assembly rides on the top of the chair. And this was, again, that Thursday night where we first got access to the chair. Please work. There we go. Okay, so now you can see the two fenders are on the front, the whole piece is here. In this picture, you can see one piece is on the side. We got the chair, and it fit perfectly. I mean, perfectly. There was one little place it rubbed on one of the wheels, not worth it. But even this chair has a place for an extended headrest to go in, so it's literally two pipes that stick up. And we designed that head assembly with rods that sit down in that. It fit perfectly. So that was a huge, huge relief. But this is now Thursday night, and we don't have any of the electronics in. So we have plans, and it fits, but Saturday morning we're doing the reveal. Actually, Friday afternoon they were doing a talk on the chair, and they wanted to have parts of it there. So it was still going to be a very late night. Actually, there's Bob over in the corner laser cutting the license plate frame at that moment. Whoops. Okay, so remember that dashboard? The dashboard was total accident. We didn't intend to build a dashboard, but when we bought the VW Bug and we took it apart, it had this really cool bright pink dashboard. So we said, well, we got to do something with that. We can't just put it to the side. So we made this. We made this. There we go. So this dashboard has a capacitance touch button, which means you don't need any force. It has two accessible technology buttons on the side, has NeoPixels in the center, has the Magic Wheelchair logo, the Maker Effect Foundation logo, and the AT Makers logo. It had a fake screen. We put a real screen in. And there's also a keyhole here you can't see. We made a custom VW 3D printed key that goes in it. So we really wanted to have a lot of interactivity. This is the inside. This is Teensy powered. So Anouk mentioned the Teensy earlier. This is a Teensy and a screen and a capacitive touch controller. This was fantastic because, again, we had a meeting to talk about how we were going to build this Magic Wheelchair, and a family had just joined the makerspace, and they said, we'll take the dashboard. And I don't know how many hours they put in collectively over that couple of weeks, but every time we said, we need this or we need that, they made it happen, and so that was just fantastic. But I mentioned Alex also had a Casio keyboard that he liked to play, so that was a really big part for us, is we wanted interactivity based on a keyboard. So this is a standard USB MIDI keyboard that we used as a controller for Alex, and you can see the pads up here are labeled. We thought that because he can't put a lot of pressure force down, we were hoping that he could use those drum type pads, and he can. He can also actuate the keys because of the lever force. And so he can play musical notes on that. He can also key up sound effects. He can make the horn sound. He can make a transformer sound. He can control the primary color of the LED animation. He can control the mode of the LED animation. So it's pretty featured. And he has a tray on his chair, and so both basically the keyboard and the dashboard, really his parents put one or the other up at a time, but they both just plug in with that single USB cord. We also created an audio input so that if you plug a sound into Bumblebee, Bumblebee reacts. So if you've seen Transformers, either the movie or the old cartoons, Bumblebee didn't have a voice, and he kind of spoke through music and the radio. Alex also can't talk, and so we thought that giving him the ability to use technology to not speak per se, but to communicate in that way would be meaningful to him and his family. So this was about a week before the chair came together. You can see I'm simulating the Transformer with a black bin with a yellow top. That was a joke. Okay, so let's see what it looks like.
All right, we're doing a little test. Let's do it.
So that's the color change. Pixels for the head, 2 for the headlights, 2 on the sides of the body, and then a neopixel strip that goes around the tray that Alex can see. Okay.
All right, now we can.
I wish you stayed with the boy.
Those are some of the sound effects that came in the helmet. We recorded them. I can't play, I know. So what's happening here is the computer is actually analyzing the notes and then driving the LEDs based on the sound.
The Bumblebee. I came to play, baby.
We spent a lot of time looking for the right 60s VW bug. Okay, you get the idea. Please go to that. Sorry, the remote's working when it wants to. Okay, so I mentioned a big mess of electronics. So this would have been late Thursday night, I think. Yeah, late Thursday night. The side panels are not wired yet, so we've got, this is all driven by a Teensy 3.6. This is a USB hub, so that's how we can talk USB MIDI to those devices. We've got a custom driver board that is controlling some RGB LEDs and those 2 bright headlight spots. We've also got some level shifters to deal with a bunch of other LEDs. And so we had a big project. Remember I said Bumblebee could come apart for transport? The fun of that was we had to put connectors here on the sides so that all the LEDs on the sides and the head could all still work. That was fun. Okay, so this is Thursday night. Here we're actually building the board. So again, remember this is due in front of a conference and a crowd on Saturday morning. This is still Thursday night. So we've got a bunch of people. There's Rita and John and Mark, and they're working on wiring one of the side panels. We had the main control board was built. You can see we got the chair over there finally. This is a little later. This is actually Friday night at this point. So now the team has come in and they're starting to weather. So they're starting to paint the outside of Bumblebee and make him all match because he's a little roughed up. He's not perfect. And so there's a lot of painting going on as well. You can see we've got the soldering iron out. We're still finishing up all the connectors. Sorry, the presentation mode keeps dying. So this is 2 a.m. on Friday. It's due. We have to pick it up and take it to the convention center at 7 on Saturday morning. So this is the first time we've got it all together. You get a good sense of how it works. Having a little fun there. And then it turned into play this song, play that song. This song will look great. Probably the hardest part about Bumblebee was we got him working and then immediately gave him away. Okay, this is Saturday morning before the reveal. We're still we're putting labels on the keys because we know what they do, but I literally had a yellow piece of paper that told us what they all did, and so we're getting them all stickered. The family's there. They're gathering a crowd outside. So the way this works is there's a reveal to the child. The child has not seen it. And so it comes out covered up, and then there's a big moment where it comes off and you can see it. Okay, so this is Alex. You can see he's got the keyboard. We've got some of the members of the team that's there. The Magic Wheelchair Organization was in. You know, this is really great because this was at an assistive technology conference. So most people there have a really good understanding of what this means to Alex, and it's really good for them to see how they can use their support to help build these as well. Okay. So right after we finished, I don't know, we didn't sleep for at least a good week there. Right after the Magic Wheelchair Organization called, they said, hey, remember how you made Bumblebee really interactive? We said, yeah. They said, we have another project coming up. I said, great, when is it? Next weekend. Could you make the electronics and ship them to us? We said, no, but I'll actually show you how to do it. So we had about 10 days at that point. So we did I did basically 2 weekends of video conferences where I had a camera pointed at a board like this, and someone in Oregon was building their same board, and they had a camera pointed at it, and we wrote the code. This is a TIE silencer. A TIE silencer was Kylo Ren's ship in the new Star Wars movies. I love that they built a General Hux, is that his name? General Hux costume for the dog. The dog was adorable. And let me show you, really we took the same tech, and I'm not going to talk a lot about the tech, but if that's something you want to know more about, stay after and I'll show you and talk about it more. We took the same tech from Bumblebee and the same code base, fixed some pretty cool bugs that we didn't have time to fix, and did the electronics and the interactivity for this. You can't really see it too well here, but there's a box right here. I guess pilots, there's a box or a board that can strap to their leg, so they use the same kind of concept. There's a box with buttons on it that he can strap to his legs, and the buttons, they make Kylo Ren speak, they fire the torpedo cannons, they fire the lasers, or it's the engine thrusters. So he's got four big sort of giant arcade buttons that drive it, and let's see if we can see it. So this was like 2 nights before their reveal. This is the first time they integrated the electronics in. Oh no. So imagine some bright red engines. I want to say it was, let's try to go back and go forward and see. No, I got nothing. Okay, let's try one more time. Nope. Okay, so there are 2 big panels on the back of a TIE silencer. I think there were 190 LEDs in the back, bright red, and they were audio reactive to the engine sound. So as the engine sound fluctuated, so did the engines, and it made this like amazing sort of red cast behind the whole costume. And when he hit the boost button and the noise of the engines came up, the LEDs came up really, really nicely with it. And have you seen the new like ultra high-end lightsabers that you can actually fight with? Yeah. They now have this acrylic tube. So it turns out one of the manufacturers for that is in Portland. So they got some of that tube, and that's what they used for the weapons on the TIE silencer. Yeah. Okay. Anyway, so they used those tubes, we put LEDs in it, and so the laser animation was a green shot down that, and then we built a special blue animation for the photon torpedoes. So what's next for the Florida wheelchair builders? So one of the things we're doing, I showed you that mess of electronics. We're going to create a custom PCB that makes it really, really easy, because what we figured out is there's a lot of sculptors that build these costumes, but they've never really done the interactivity the way that we did. We didn't know any better. That's just what we do. So since they're now calling and saying, hey, can you help us do it? We're going to make a nice big PCB that integrates all those same functions so that you don't have to make boards like this, and we're going to make it so that you can just plug the TNC, plug an audio amplifier in, and a lot of screw terminals so that you can really, really easily build one of these costumes. And then we're also going to build a set of open source packages for it, so that now, for example, with the TIE silencer, we've kind of got a Star Wars space code build, right? It's got an engine sound, it's got 2 weapon sounds, it's got a speech, it's got background music. It's kind of already done, and really you just need to load your specific sounds for your piece in with it, maybe customize a little bit. So we're going to be working on that now that we're done with power racing here. At MegaCon Orlando in May, we're going to exhibit Bumblebee. Alex is going to come out one day, but the rest of the time we'll just have the Bumblebee costume, and then we're going to do a builder panel there. For those in the room who are on the team, no, I have not heard back from MegaCon as to when that is yet, but they've said we're going to do it. At NomCon 2019 for Nation of Makers, we're going to do a live build there, which terrifies me. But I think what it's going to be is live assembly. I think most of it will be pre-built, and we'll do final assembly there. What we're going to do is try to use that new PCB. I want to be on version 2 or version 3 by that point in time, so we really test it out. And then what we're thinking is maybe we'll do an annual build for MegaCon. We think it would be great to theme it with one of the stars that's going to be at MegaCon so that we can get them to interact. That's what they do at Comic-Con. You saw some of the video earlier, so we think that'll be super helpful. So if you want to get involved with Magic Wheelchair, there's a few things that you can do. So you can go to magicwheelchair.org/volunteers. You can sign up as a builder or build group. You can go to one of the conventions where Magic Wheelchair is going to be and support. You can help make people just aware, and they really appreciate the awareness. It's a bunch of great people doing this. You can also donate, so there's /donate. That Magic Wheelchair paid for the materials for Alex's build. We put all the labor in, but they paid for the materials. We didn't have to fundraise for that. You can start a fundraiser, so especially the Facebook birthday fundraisers are super awesome. A lot of people are doing it. They're a very, very easy way to raise money for your favorite charities. And if you shop on Amazon, you can use Amazon Smile to also support the Magic Wheelchair program. I will also add that while we're not the Magic Wheelchair organization, if you're interested in getting started, we will gladly tell you everything we know, help connect you with them. We've got people from our team in Miami, we've got people from our team in Orlando, so we're happy to talk to you and get you connected. Yes, there is AC in here. Come on in. If you want to learn more, magicwheelchair.org. You can find out about our makerspace at makereffects.org. The code for Bumblebee and the TIE silencer is out there. I will tell you the TIE silencer is far better than Bumblebee, because Bumblebee, we really just got it working enough and then shipped it. I've made some recent changes to fix some bugs, but Make MIA, local, Makers Hollow, you can follow them on Instagram, AT Makers, which I had earlier, and then if you'd like to contact me, I'm happy to talk to you about all of this. And then, for whatever time we have left, we'd like to do a Q&A. If anyone that was on the build team would like to come down and answer questions, you are welcome to join us down here.
We have the whole build team come down for a quick picture.
Oh, sorry, now Mario's making you all come down.
Yeah. I only got to watch this on Slack. I saw this happen real time on Slack, but I didn't do it well.
Does anyone have a question? Anything you want to know? somebody please ask me a question. Yes, sir.
So you said to me is disassembled, which it looked to me like you had the side panel.
So you-
Okay, so you guys plan to make it assemble and disassemble easily, and I was just curious your approach on doing that. You know, it looked like you had some wing nuts or some other stuff, but I was just curious, you know, obviously you want it to be rigid enough to stay together, but then also, how much did it compact down into as far as transportation?
So I'll answer the transportation part first. It really doesn't compact. The kind of the best we got is the side panels are fairly light and aren't really easily damaged. So like when I moved it once, you put one down, put a moving blanket on it, you know, put it on top of it. The electronics assembly you saw is very fragile. We just did not have time to really do it. We did put connectors in between the corners. I am holding on to the wiring diagram that we did on the fly, but it is still fairly fragile, and we've talked to the family about being careful with it, and we've also told them they get lifetime tech support. So, and it fit in their small SUV. You guys did the corners and the frames, which I thought was genius. Like, I don't know who did that, but that, if you want to.
Yeah, so the frame was basically, two members of the frame were butted up against each other, so we didn't want to have like complicated hardware and stuff, and we didn't really want to require like wrenches or Allen keys or anything to really bolt it together. So the front panel, I think, had basically like just tabs welded on that was kind of like a datum for alignment for the other one. So the side panels literally just slid up to those tabs, and there were some studs welded in, so it would trap it in one direction, the stud would trap it in the other direction, and then there was just some wing nuts to hold it in place. So you could just do it manually. It was 10 seconds you'd have to.
The other benefit on that, while I said it fit perfectly, we may have ended up with a washer on one side under the wing nuts, and the fact that you didn't have a chair to work from. So actually that design was great because it let us easily add a little bit of width, but still have the same rigidity, which was super awesome.
Yeah, I mean, like Ian said, the biggest struggle for us building the frame was the fact that we didn't have the chair, and there was the tray that he talked about. It was mounted on. There was a panel or something that had this other adjustable arm that came off the side. We weren't really sure where that went or how that was really routed. So we kind of had to build the frame knowing that there was going to be 2 inches or an inch here, an inch there, and wiggle room essentially. So
did the costume have casters underneath each? Okay.
yeah, the frame itself.
For the rest of the people, I just asked if the costume had casters on each wall side.
Yes. So the frame, the rear panels, the side panel, sorry, had a caster on the rear, and the front panel had 2 casters. So when you put it together, it had 4. I think.
Yeah, and the feedback from the family, if we're going to do it again, the casters we used were about this size, which is great, except if you think about the analog would be like pushing a big stroller, and you're going to go over a door jamb, you tend to kind of push it in, lean the whole thing back to go over it, and so it does. If you hit a good threshold, it does start to buckle a little bit. So one of the things I've talked with Alex's dad about is putting some larger casters on it, so it's a little bit. But we also said, please don't take it to a day at Disney. It's not going to survive. But his parents are actually re-theming his bedroom. It's going to be Bumblebee themed now. And so what we're going to do is we're going to take it and mount the center panel on the wall with the head above it and splay the sides out so he can have that experience, and put the keyboard in front, so he can have that experience all the time, not just when it's in that costume form when they're out. They have it set up in their living room right now, which is pretty great. He sits in front of it and plays it a lot.
Thank you. I saw a few BattleBot experts here, so I guess I'm wondering, BattleBot is completely different spot, it's robot, and now you're building a costume for a wheelchair. Any different in terms of building this costume for
It's exactly the
kids?
same. It's exactly
Really?
the same. Yeah.
You don't have any regulation you worry about?
No, I mean, like Ian said, you have to be conscious of, you're pushing this thing around and you push it over bumps or whatever you crash it into a wall or whatever. So you have to think about it, and we actually we went to Harbor Freight to get those casters that he was mentioning, and and we had like kind of a heated debate about the caster size. I wanted to get the biggest ones we could, but obviously we weren't sure about how they were going to fit, and if they swivel, you know, when you steer it, it could crash into the frame of the you know, the wheelchair itself. So so we were like, oh, we'll just get smaller ones, but then I knew we were going to have issues with that.
You're always right.
It's all right, it's okay.
They also almost swivel into the chassis, so.
As it was, yeah.
And we had a long debate, but we decided no weapons on the costume. Like it seemed like it'd be fun, but no actual weapons on the costume.
If we could do a BattleBots themed magic wheelchair, it'd be pretty awesome. That'd be pretty awesome.
I'm sure we can find a kiddo that would like this.
No real weapons.
Andrea's down there like, after the conversation, like, stop committing.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Could you ever do this presentation for middle school or high school?
Sure, we'd be happy to.
Thank you.
Just,
Where is it?
Yeah. Sorry. Yep, I'm sure we can find someone that would talk about Magic Wheelchair there, especially once BattleBot stops filming.
If you were to design from the ground up with more time